India is Morni, which means the sheep peacock, a peahen. So this was a name given in my very early days by Didi Manmohini. And I'm originally from Australia. I've been in Gyan now for 37 years. But I've been in Asia for 30 years. And for the last 4 years in India. And I've been working on this project, The Future of Power. This first phase of this project is just completed, which is why we had the cake with Baba at the last meeting. So now I'm kind of on my way back to Australia, but I don't know what is the kind of next phase of my life. But anyway, this is where I am at. So how's the translation? It's okay? Not yet. Is there someone there? Okay, Russian. I think brother's gone up. He's going up fast. So this topic kind of comes from what Baba says to us every so often. Few know me as I am what I am. Are you getting the translation yet? Any translation? Not yet. Okay, we'll wait for a minute. Just while they're getting sorted out, if you could sit next to someone who speaks your language, because I would like this session to be quite reflective, but also good to share with somebody in between. So if you can just sit next to someone who speaks your language. Okay, is everyone sitting next to someone that speaks their language? How are you going to speak to each other? You're very far away. Sit next to someone who speaks your language. One brother's here. Okay. Come together. Sister, which language? Huh? You can sit with someone speaks your language? Tamil. Tamil? There's Tamil here. What about at the back there? Sit next to someone who speaks your language. You can sit in threes, twos or threes, but two's easy. So, is the translation okay now? Okay? Good. So Baba, from time to time, says to us, few know me as I am and what I am. So every so often I think about this myself, because we know what we know about Baba, but we don't know what we don't know. And so often we need to take time out and really expand our understanding from what it is to maybe, or what I think it is, to what it really is. So maybe just a 2 or 3 minutes, 2 minutes reflection now with ourselves, just thinking about that. How much do you feel you know Baba? Just think about this. because it's not enough time to think about it, but just to bring the question into the room, to think about, few know me as I am what I am. So this topic, how big is my God, is so that we can a little bit explore who is Baba, what is Baba, where is Baba. And even yesterday, Baba said something so interesting. He said, do I eat? Do I play? I play with you, but I don't eat with you. Does he eat? He doesn't eat? What about when we feed Baba on the stage? Who's eating? Huh? Who's eating? It's not the chariot, because one secret is that Dadi Gulzar doesn't like bananas, and they always give Baba bananas. So it's not it's not Dadi Gulzar eating the bananas. She doesn't like bananas. So who's eating the banana? It's just funny, isn't it? And that's what we're going to a little bit explore today. I don't think there's real answers to this. In Zen Buddhism, they have something called a koan. And what a koan is, it's something that you meditate on that's got no answer. Like, what's the sound of one hand clapping? What comes first, the chicken or the egg? Is there an answer? So eternity is one of those koans that there's no answer. And life, God, especially God, is such a big mystery. Do we want to know all the answers? Do you want to know everything about Baba? Or do you want Baba to remain a little bit of a mystery? Huh? What do you think? Do you want to know everything? Or you want some mystery? Mystery's interesting. And this is the thing. If we feel that we know Baba, then that relationship becomes a little bit stale. They say this is the main reason for divorce, because a husband and wife, after a few years, think that they know each other. Can you ever know anyone? So if you think you know someone, there's not much interest anymore. And that's why I think Baba says this, because by saying, few know me as I am what I am, it keeps our interest in Baba. And I don't know about you, but I have fallen in love with Baba several times, not once. When I get to see another new and very interesting aspect of Baba, it's like I fall in love all over again, because it's like I meet Baba for almost the first time. Do you have that experience? And this is why I think Baba uses these words, because he wants us to keep the relationship with him alive. And if we think, oh, I know Baba, then it's not very interesting. In fact, one Dadi Tikam Dadi Herde Pushpa from Bangalore, she's left the body now, but she never used to call Baba, Baba. She always called Baba God, because she never wanted to be too casual with Baba. She wanted to always keep in mind that this is God. You know, when it's Baba, it's like, just Dad. He's so close, he's so familiar, he's so easy. And there is a beauty in Baba being so close. In fact, I don't know about you, but for me, this was what was so attractive. I didn't like the idea of this God sitting up there somewhere in the sky, big, judging everything that's happening. I really liked the idea that we can be so close to Baba. Even Baba says equal to Baba. So close. So this was very attractive. So sometimes I enjoy this equality with Baba, this very, very kind of easy, close relationship where you can argue with Baba. Do you ever argue with Baba? Someone was telling me yesterday that he was having an argument with Baba. Do you ever argue with Baba? Do you feel you can? Can you argue with Baba? Can you? Sometimes we like to argue with Baba, like we're just like so close. But then at other times, it's good also to realize that this is God. God is such a big word, isn't it? A very big word. And millions and billions of people all over the world are trying to get close to find God. They're climbing up to the Himalayas, they're going to so many places to try to get close to God. So that's the God also. That's kind of the big God. But also, we can experience all these different facets. And I think it's, to me, important to enjoy all the facets of God, like a diamond. There's not one facet, there's many facets. Like when Baba would come and speak the Murli, he would often start off very powerful, very big, and then he'd get light, and then he'd start joking, and you'd experience, all different facets of Baba in one Murli. And so in our relationship with Baba, it's good to experience both the closeness but also the vastness. And so it's good to feel Baba's Baba, and at other times it's good to feel Baba's God. And then to think about how big is Baba's lap? How big is that? How big is Baba's family? Is Baba's family just the Brahmins? Sometimes we think, Baba's family. We even use that word, Baba's family. I think we should be a little bit careful. In one sense it's Baba's family, the Brahmin family, but in reality, who is in Baba's family? All the souls of the world. And so if we want to, keep our God big, if we want to keep Baba big, and if we want to also serve all the people of the world, it's good to keep in mind that whilst we have our lovely little Brahmin family, which is also what we say is Baba's family, there's also God's family. And it's almost as if we use those two words in that different way, Baba's family and God's family. Yes, brother? Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And that's the one golden thread that I find that makes me love him more, because he is inclusive of everyone.
Yeah. So what brother's saying is that used to be his litmus test of, is this really God? To see how inclusive God is. Because Baba is so inclusive. And just one experience of that was when I was in Hong Kong. There was a sister who left the body, and she was with Baba from the early days, the original, days in Karachi. And then she left and she got married. And in the later years, the doctors said that she needed to eat fish for her health. So she started to eat fish. What was really beautiful for me is Baba sent a Borg message for her when she left the body. And that Borg message was so full of love and so as if she was like the number one child for Baba. There was no hint of, she ate fish, she left, that gathering. No hint of that at all. Baba was just totally, non-judgmental and talking about this sister as if she was the number one. And that's another way we need to check how big is our God. Because from our bhakti and often from religion, we've made God quite limited, punishing, You know, we can feel sometimes that God would punish. That's very small. Would God punish? But this is the general view of people, and this is often what we feel also. You know, because those things of bhakti take a long time to remove. And Dadi was saying the other day, when she met us the other day, that it's very, very important, if we've made a mistake, that we just, you know, tell Baba and finish it and stop thinking about it. But often we find that difficult because we feel that we have to be punished. You know, there's a deep kind of conditioning inside where we tell ourselves we should be punished if we've done something wrong. And I remember one brother, when I was staying in the retreat center, he did something wrong. And I said to him, I said, what would Baba say? And he said, just give me a minute. Baba said he loves me very, very, very much. And I said to him, he did not. But of course he did. And this was a very beautiful kind of chit-chat we were having, that Baba is not conditional. You know, we say Baba's the ocean of love. Most people would say the main definition of love is that love is unconditional. And yet, usually, we are making Baba very conditional in our mind, in our relationship. So Baba's not punishing, Baba's not judging, Baba's not... Well, there's a question. How much does Baba see us number-wise? Because this word comes up, even today in the Muli, this idea of number-wise. Number-wise, in a sense of the status also that we will get in the golden age, number-wise in the way that we will be worshipped. So this number-wise often gives us a feeling of kind of, I'm number one, I'm number 1 million, because I'm not as good as this one and that one. So where does this whole number-wise also come into our relationship with Baba? So for me, how I understand that is that Baba tells things as they are, just like the philosophy of karma. You know, whatever you do, it will come back to you. So whether that's negative or positive. So if I'm, you know, raising my consciousness, then of course I'm going to experience the return of that. So Baba's telling us, you know, if we do this, this is what will happen. If we do this, this is what will happen. But I don't think Baba's judging us and putting us number-wise in his world through this teaching, because Baba's the teacher and he has to tell us very clearly. And of course a teacher needs to inspire. So Baba wants us to keep the big picture of what our effort needs to be. So Baba was saying, if we only have remembrance, yad, for a certain period of time, then we won't be able to create a yadgar, a memorial. You know, so it's also sometimes rhyming in Hindi, but it's got a lot of meaning, because a memorial is what, you know, is there in bhakti that we can see as the memory, but not just in bhakti, in all the stories, in all the fables, in all the, you know, songs, you know, the heroes and the good against evil and all of these things, it's all there. So Baba wants us to, you know, aim for the highest, and if he doesn't put it quite number-wise, then it's not always easy for us to see what is the highest effort, what is the, you know, what is the highest goal that I can reach. And what was Baba saying? It was our aim today in the Muli. He said we all have the same aim, to be soul conscious. You know, he brought it down to the essence. Our aim is to be soul conscious, but to what extent are we soul conscious? And actually, how big is my God is very connected to how big am I, the soul, because I am also by nature, I am a soul, Baba is a soul. So that makes us equal, because the soul is a being of love, of peace, of happiness. So, if I really am soul conscious, I can't be very different to Baba, because I will be, if I'm soul conscious, I will be a being of peace, of love, of happiness, and in that sense, I won't have any needs also. Because if I'm a being of peace, I don't need peace. If I'm a being of happiness, I don't need happiness. And so when I'm soul conscious, I am equal to Baba, but I'm also so full that Baba's even said not just we're equal to Baba, but we're, he uses master gods. He uses such big titles for us, master gods. So do you think of yourself as a master god? Do you ever think of that? That I'm master god? He said also that in one Muli, that we will remove the sins of others. And that was a really big thing for me to listen to, because we only think of God as that. But what does that mean for me, that I am in that stage, that I can remove the sins of others? What does it mean? What does it mean? To me it means that in my vision I don't see any weakness, and when there's that completely pure vision, what Baba was saying in that Muli is that they will forgive themselves. So we will remove their sin by enabling them to forgive themselves. So you can see not just how big is my God, but how big Baba is making me, I, the soul, because I am equal to God in my essence, in my reality. And so the more I can, it can be either way, the more I can realize myself, then the more I can realize Baba. Because Baba also says that when we are soul conscious, then we will have natural remembrance of Baba, because there's no difference between us. And Baba was saying today that the method to make that remembrance easy is what? What's the method to make remembrance easy? To be cooperative. It sounds somewhat easy, doesn't it? To be cooperative, doesn't it? So Baba's saying that if we are sayog, if we're cooperative, then we'll be yogi, we'll remember Baba just by that cooperation, but then also it'll be sahaj yoga, it'll be easy yoga. So the more that we are cooperative, we can journey along this path. So then also what's said about God is that he is asochta, the one that doesn't think. Does Baba think? Does Baba think? In fact, it's even our nature not to think, in the sense that thinking is a faculty of the mind, and the mind is a faculty to be used. So when we need to think, we think. That's how our mind is meant to work. But of course what's happening at the moment is the mind doesn't stop. It's just going on like this all the time. But is that natural? It's totally out of order. Our mind is out of order. When anything can't be turned off, if you've got a machine and you can't switch it off, do you think it's normal? Is it normal to have a machine you can't switch off? It's not normal. And this mind has become such that we can't, there's no off button. It's so hard to press that off button, which is what we're trying to do with meditation. But it's not natural to think and think and think. In the golden age, will we be thinking? Will we think in the golden age? Huh? How many think we'll think in the golden age? How I see ourselves in the golden age is that we would just be. We would just be. We wouldn't think. We'd just be. Just be. We'd just feel this oneness. Actually, I think Dadi Gulzar's already reached that. When I look at her, I don't get any feeling that she's thinking. What do you feel? Just bring Dadi Gulzar to mind. And I think most of you have just been down to see her, or some are going down to see her. But if you watch her, she doesn't look like she thinks. When she needs to have a thought, she has a thought. But she's just in this state of being, which I find her so fascinating, because there's very few human beings like Dadi Gulzar. Have you met anyone else like Dadi Gulzar? I've never met anyone like her that is in this kind of just state of being. But that is our normal state, just to be, which means just to be in the experience of myself as a being of love and peace, and to be connected, just connected. Like somebody described, in the golden age, if we saw a bird flying past, a beautiful bird, then we would just... In the silver age, we'd... You know, that much difference. In the silver age, maybe, we start to feel a little separation, so we even feel that there's me and the bird. But in the golden age, we won't have that distinction. There'll be such a feeling of oneness, and we'll be in the experience for most of the time, and probably sometimes we might need to think a little bit, but hardly. What would we think about? You know, if you have a party in the golden age, what would you do? Would you think, what will I cook? Who will I invite? Do you think you'll do it like that? Have you thought about this? I think it'll be more like in Madhaban, when there's a happening, well, not our organized happenings, but there's so many little happenings that go on. And, you know, often you just find yourself as a part of that. Like, for example, one time I just got this feeling to get on the bus. So I got on the bus and went to Pandav Bhavan. And when I got there, somebody said, "Oh, we were wanting to call you. We're just having a little, I don't know what it was, some little gathering." And I just appeared there. So I think this is how it will be in Golden Age. It's not that there'll be lists and all of this. There'll be an atmosphere, and we will arrive at the right time, at the right place. Have you experienced this? How many have experienced this kind of thing? Yeah. Don't you think this will be more the way in the Golden Age, or do you think we'll do a lot of planning and organizing? What do you think? Yeah, it will be, we'll hardly think. Hardly think. And we will know things intuitively. There was a very good study done of, this is part of the promotion of vegetarianism, saying that animals also have kind of an intelligence. But they gave what would you call him? Anyway, he gave a quail egg to a chicken. One quail egg was put in with the chicken's eggs. Right? So this mother chicken hatched that quail. So when the quail came out, quail, a different kind of bird to a chicken. So they thought even the chicken might get rid of that egg. But no, the chicken sat and took care of that quail egg, and that quail came out. But what was really interesting is that the chicken knew what to feed the quail. It went and dug for worms and fed the quail with what a quail eats. Now, how did the chicken know? Right? How did the chicken know what a quail would eat? So this is the kind of intelligence that I think also is natural to us. We don't have to learn much if we're tuned, if we're just tuned. So how much will we think in the golden age? That's a question. And maybe it's good, because I don't like to talk too much. I like people to talk to each other. So just up to now what we've talked about, just take 5 minutes to talk to each other about some of these ideas. Okay, so just with the person next to you, just take a few minutes, whether, whatever's been said up to now. Just have a few minutes to reflect on it. Please, talk to each other. Just sit next to someone who speaks your language. Or you can sit in threes if there's not twos. I'm sure these sisters would welcome you. Okay, maybe just one more minute. All right, if I could have your attention, Om Shanti. So at the end, if you can just make a note of anything, questions or insights, because at the end we'll do sharing when we can give a microphone to you. So one more question now is, what is big? How do we measure big? Baba's a point. I'm a point. So how big is your God? You know, actually Baba's just a tiny, infinitesimally tiny point of light. So how do we measure big? What's the measurement for big? Oh, he's putting the mic now. Thank you. So what's the measurement for big? Perhaps we can measure it in terms of energy, power, because even though Baba's just a point, Baba's so powerful, and that's why often people have worshipped the sun, because in terms of the universe, of course the sun is big, it's not small, but in the sense of the universe, it's small. And yet, it produces enough power for the whole world many times over. The atom, it's the smallest thing, and yet so powerful in terms of energy. So how big is unlimited? How big is, all of the things we say about God? God is unlimited. It's one of the most beautiful ways to expand the mind, to think of these words like eternal, unlimited. So how big is unlimited? And Baba says that we need to think of him as unlimited. So when we're thinking of terms of big in terms of energy, it also helps us to be soul conscious, because the body, it's very big compared to the soul, isn't it? It's very big compared to a tiny soul, and yet it's got nowhere near the power of the soul. And in fact, I don't know if you've heard of this, but it's amazing the power of the soul. I met a sister in Bhopal. You can look at it on YouTube. Just trying to remember her name, but I will. She is in the Guinness Book of Records for pulling a weight of 850,000 kilograms with her hair. She put her hair in plaits, and she tied the bottom of the plaits to something on this big truck that was loaded, and she pulled the truck. I saw that on YouTube, but I personally met her and saw her pull a small train with about 8 people on it in Bhopal. I saw it physically with my own eyes. She ties her hair to this kind of pulling thing with her hands behind her back and just pulled it. Now, what is that? What kind of a power and energy is that? Of course, the body. Can the body do that? If the body could do it, why can't anybody do it? And she's only about maybe 19, 20. The day before, she's a BK. The day before, she was dancing on the stage. She lives in the center. She's just like one of the other regular kind of sisters in the center. but she can pull 850,000 kilo with her hair. What is that? It's something, isn't it? So there's so many things that are, beyond our human comprehension. That's why mystery is also, it's good to keep some mystery in our life, like that koan. There's no answer to so many things. But what this does, to me anyway, it makes me feel that anything's possible. Because it seems anything is possible. I've seen other things, you've probably seen also, but that was one of the most greatest phenomena I saw with my own eyes. But we've heard of these kinds of things, of people healing themselves from, life-threatening illnesses, like our brother Chandrasekhar, who now writes books and does training. He calls his book The Invisible Doctor, but he was actually dying of a few things. I think he had liver cancer and he had so many other things, and somehow his inner doctor started working, and now he's been instrumental to help many others. And his memory, if you give him 30 telephone numbers, he can remember them all. And then he says, give me the last 2 numbers of yours and the first of yours, and I'll tell you the ones in between. It's like, what is that? So it just goes to show that the small, the soul, the energy, is so big in its capacity, in its capability. And so because of our body consciousness, everything comes into the limited. But when we're in soul consciousness, we can expand out and take things into the unlimited. But what is that thing that seems to be that brings the most limited consciousness? What do you think? The smallest, and yet the biggest. It can be the smallest and the biggest. I, yeah. Because the I, it makes our thinking, it probably produces the most amount of thought. And that was again my realization just the other day, that how much waste, what a waste of time when I'm thinking in any terms of I. Like I didn't get this, or I should have that, or this one got that and I didn't get this. It's so limited and so small, this thinking, and yet we tend to engage in it a lot. But when we think in terms of ego, is ego small or is ego big? Huh? It's big. Yeah, it's so big and yet it's so small in the sense it's so petty. It's not a big thought. It's not a big thought. You can't think ego's a big thought. It's so small and petty, and yet it's big in its impact on us. And in Buddhism, generally, there's a lot of schools of thought, but generally in Buddhism, they don't believe in the soul. Now, that's kind of a little interesting, but I've met, very great masters of Buddhism, teachers of Buddhism, and when I really, as Baba says, probe them, when I really go in and ask them, they always admit that there's the soul, because they believe in reincarnation. How can there be reincarnation without a soul? They believe in karma. How can there be karma if there's not a soul? But what they generally say is that they don't talk about the soul, and they try to kind of negate the whole idea of the soul, because it's that idea of the soul that is the individuality, right? We as souls are all unique and different. So it's very hard to separate the I, in the sense, from the individual, the soul. And so what one Buddhist told me, he said, yeah, we do believe in the soul, but it's only for advanced lessons, which is very interesting, because to us everything comes down to the soul. But, you can see why they could remove the whole consciousness of I in an effort to be humble, in an effort to, stop all this I. And yet, we were having some sharing the other day, I forget what it was, but, we have to go through the whole labyrinth of all of this consciousness of the self and come out the other side in the experience of bodiless, in the experience of humility, and all of those beautiful ways of experiencing ourself without the ego. But because of this, kind of very insidious, this very, like this ego comes in to everything, so we are sometimes scared of ego. And that sometimes prevents people from expressing themselves and being themselves, because they're scared. If I become big, two things. One is, if I become big, my ego will also grow. And the other is, if I become big, others will only knock me down, right? Because this is also in most cultures. But if there's any Americans here, the Americans have told me it's not in the American culture. And they've told me that they don't have any expression. Like in English we say, in Australia we say the tall poppy will be get cut. The Chinese say the nail that sticks out will get hammered. The Filipinos say the crab that tries to come out of the bucket will get pulled down. And you can think in your own language, but nearly every culture has a saying about this. Can you think in your own language of this kind of thing? It's very common that when we try to go up, somebody will knock us down. And so for that reason, we're scared to be big. But should we be big? As one poem says, there's nothing enlightened about shrinking so that others don't feel insecure around you. Sorry, translators, did you get that? There's nothing enlightened about shrinking so that others don't feel insecure around you. In other words, when you come up, it makes others feel insecure because they don't want you to go ahead of them. That will make them feel less. So what we often do is keep ourselves small so that we don't create this insecurity in others. Of course, we don't create it, so that this insecurity doesn't come up in others and they start to attack me. Can you relate to what I'm saying? I don't know how this is in Russian. Do you have a saying in Russian about this? The tall poppy gets cut. The nail that sticks up gets hammered. In other words, when we try to come up, people knock us down. And so we often keep ourselves small so that others don't attack us. But there's nothing enlightened in that. And there's nothing liberating in that. Because what we're doing is just, keeping our heads down and going along, but we're not growing, we're not, as this poem says, we are born to make manifest the light of God that's within us. All of us have talent and abilities and qualities that are meant to shine. We are born to shine, but we get scared, so we keep ourselves down. But what this poem also says is that when we let our light shine, we allow others to shine their light. So this change is very much needed in our whole culture around the world, that we celebrate other people going ahead of us, that we want other people to go ahead of us. But most of us are so insecure, we get jealous very easily, and we're not comfortable with that. And so how big can I be? How big is my God that, I can align with, that can release all of this? Because it needs to be released. We all need to release our power, our potential. And so it's only by, thinking big that we will start to do this. And thinking big is connected to Baba. You want to say something? He did that. Yeah. I mean, if you think about Brahma Baba, he was such a big businessman, a multi-millionaire, very elderly. How could he have become so humble? No? It just is like amazing. When somebody, like I'm working with Brother Nizar, he's a very big industrialist, chairman of 54 companies, and big, physically big, and holding big positions. So when he speaks softly, people get so taken aback and impressed and amazed, and, they feel so good because they think, well, if he can do it, I can do it, So imagine Brahma Baba, how from such a big personality, also he was tall, very tall and a great personality, a very wealthy person, a leader in the community, and yet so humble. I think we've got time for a little story before traffic control, but Usha Ben was telling me that she went to Baba one time, Usha from Mumbai, and he was resting in the afternoon, and she went and woke him up and she said, Baba, I want a mango that's ripened on the tree. Can you imagine? I want a mango that's ripened on the tree. So Baba got up and went with her to get her a mango. And I thought, how humble, Normally, like a big person like that, you wouldn't disturb them to start with, but also their ego would come up. What do you think, disturbing me for such a small thing? But, if you hear any of the stories of anyone with first-hand personal experience, Baba's humility comes out in such a great way, and I don't think we should take that for granted, because it's not a small thing. If he can be humble, why can't I be humble? And so I think it's time for traffic control, so let's pause and just think of how big not only our Shiv Baba was, but our Brahma Baba, how big and yet so humble. He made himself so small and yet big. Let's think about that. And talking about how big is ego, it seems to be the biggest problem in our spiritual journey, but also in our relationships with others, in our families. So if you could also just take a minute to share with the person next to you what effort works for you to kind of curb that ego. What do you do to address the ego that emerges? So just share with the person next to you what yukti, what method, what do you do to try to transcend ego. So just share for another minute. so I might stop you there, but please try to remember what you learned from each other, or because we will finish with a little bit of sharing. But there's only one more point to bring up from my side about how big is your God, and that is just the whole thing of the drama. So when we are, using these physical bodies and living in this world, it seems that, we have to understand this drama. And the big thing about Baba is his understanding, complete acceptance of each and every soul, because each soul has their part according to the drama. What do you think Baba feels about, or felt about, Hitler when he was playing that role? What do you think? Huh? Did Baba love Hitler? Does Baba love that soul Hitler? Huh? Does Baba love Hitler? Does Baba love a rapist? Does Baba love a murderer? Huh? Has to be, no? Because actually this is a drama. Hitler had that role of playing that part of Hitler. And understanding the philosophy of karma, it's very big actually, because if we understand the philosophy of karma, we also need to accept that no one innocent ever suffers. No one innocent ever suffers. Right? If we believe in this law of karma, no one innocent can ever suffer. And usually we get so much emotion coming up because of feeling of innocent victims, and it brings up so much anger and feelings of injustice, and so much comes up from us. But if we detached and we, took all the knowledge and we understood that no one innocent ever suffers, that this is a drama, that there are so many people doing wrong actions, that those people will need to get the return of those actions, right? According to the law of karma. So someone needs to be an instrument for that. But when we really step back and see this vast, unlimited drama, it's big. Because we also see that we also have to accept the night and the day of this drama. I remember I was in China, and it was just a few years after the Cultural Revolution. And I was talking to someone who had suffered a lot during that time. And, I was also happened to be reading a book about what went on during that time. And I don't know, I just really took an overdose of sorrow. I just took in all this sorrow, and I was there. And so many people had suffered. So I was in the atmosphere. I was listening to personal stories, reading stories. And that night I couldn't sleep. I just was so overwhelmed by this kind of feeling of sorrow, and also a confusion, because I felt, how can it be like this? Why is the drama made like this, that people have to suffer so much? And so I couldn't sleep thinking about this, and how can the drama be like this? Because I hadn't, thought about it. I haven't personally experienced so much sorrow in my life, so it was a bit of a kind of a first encounter on a mass scale of what kind of sorrow exists in the world. And so I thought, I better get up and read a muli, because my mind is in a mess, being so totally absorbed in all of this. And I picked up a muli. Can you imagine? It's hard to imagine what muli would address this. So I picked up this muli and it said, the Creator loves the creation. The day is good and the night is good. You must also love the creation. Can you imagine how accurate this muli was? I mean, I couldn't have imagined reading anything more accurate. I'm not saying it was easy still to kind of realize that or accept it, but it was saying the Creator loves the creation. The day is good and the night is good. You must also love the creation. Because it is a drama, right? And a drama is of remembering and forgetting, of happiness and sorrow, of night and day, of victory and defeat. Otherwise, it's not a drama. We wouldn't have a drama if it was all just going along. And the thing is, no one really created this drama. It's eternal. Who created this drama? Huh? Who created it? Doesn't that make you think big? When did it begin? Does that make you think big? It has no beginning. It will have no end. And no one created it. It's eternal. How big our mind has to be to just kind of let that sit. And so if we can embrace the bigness of things, it stops all that tension of questioning, because there's no answer as to why there has to be this sorrow. There's no answer to that. Just like there's no answer to eternity, just as there's no answer to who created the world. But expanding the mind takes us out of these, dilemmas or these kind of things that we get stuck with. And when we just expand our mind and see the drama, we have to just accept the drama. The drama is what it is. And in the picture of Shankar, they say, because they give names to all the parts of the body and the symbols that he has, but they say his eyes, in one eye is Arun, which is, the root of the word compassion, and the other Varun, which is complete detachment. So this is how we have to see this drama, isn't it? With passion, with compassion, and yet an equal amount of detachment. That's how Baba sees the drama. Otherwise he'd be a mess, wouldn't he? Baba knows, I think. Does he know everything? Does he? Who thinks Baba knows everything? Sometimes he says he doesn't, but we all feel he does. We all feel he responds to our every thought. So Baba knows everything. So seeing all the suffering of all the souls in the world, can you imagine if you could see the suffering of all the souls in the world right now? Can you imagine? My God, it'd be, I don't know how we could take it all in. And yet Baba, knows all of that and stays beyond. And Baba tells us we also need to be aware of all of that so that we can give love and good wishes and not be too comfortable, because sometimes we are just comfortable in our life and we don't think about all that suffering that's going on in the world, so we don't make the kind of intense effort to bring the kind of change that we need for a new world, for a golden age, the change that has to come in ourselves, because it's only when we change that the world will change. So Baba used to get up at 2 o'clock, Brahma Baba used to get up 2 o'clock in the morning to meditate, because he was just so aware of all the suffering in the world, so sensitive. And in that sensitivity, giving. See what happens to us, through meditation, through becoming spiritual, we also become sensitive. We need to be sensitive. But often when we are sensitive, we get weak and we feel hurt easily, and it doesn't empower us. But we need to be sensitive and powerful by being so detached. But someone was asking me the other day a question, because she said someone in the room was going through something and she was having like negative thoughts. And she thought, where are these thoughts coming from? Because everything's going quite well. And then that sister shared, oh, I've been thinking like this for the last few days. And it surprised her, because she thought, my God, I've been picking up this person's thoughts. So this is what happens when we become sensitive. So as much as we are sensitive, that much we need to be powerful and need to be givers, so that we don't absorb and, get weak in this. But all of that comes from knowing myself, because I have to know where the other person ends and where I start. So when I'm whole and complete, when I'm soul conscious, I won't absorb negative things in myself, and I can see and kind of be sensitive to the suffering of the world, not take the sorrow, but give, so that I can be big also in that stage of being a donor, a great donor of giving good wishes, really, from conscious awareness and from the heart, because this is what the world is needing. So we just have another 10 minutes and I haven't heard anything from you. So if anyone wants to come and use the microphone, you can ask a question, you can share what you learned from your partner, you can share your own insight. So please come up to this microphone. Yeah. And just keep it brief so we can hear from a few people. Thanks.
I love this. Did you love this? I love this topic that you gave. And this is what I love in spirituality. My background is Jainism. And as you pointed out about the nail that comes out. So we can think very freely. And this is what I love about this institution, about being with Baba. It allows me to think clearly, freely, with a lot of love, compassion. And these are the qualities that we are all supposed to be expressing. Mm-hmm. And another point I wanted to make was, I've been close enough to Dadi Gulzar, like you're sitting over there, and I could sense her spirit. And that just opened up the doors and windows of my mind to see and feel what this spirit can be like. And that was like a wow moment. It's etched in right here. I'll never forget that. Mm-hmm. And so we can be that. And this is the beauty of coming here, so we can express ourselves, so that I'm no longer that nail. I can be that flying bird. Mm-hmm. And this is what we all have. That we all have that DNA. We all have that gene. We all have the divinity in us. And this is what we're learning. There's a sign near the Tower of Peace, and it talks about the divine virtues. I mean, I saw it with a different outlook, just 3 days ago. And I'm saying to myself, I can relate to it now.
Yeah.
In the past, it was just some words, appreciation, zeal, enthusiasm. What does it really mean?
Yeah.
So, a few things have...
Good.
This is my second visit back to back, and it's opened up, it's made the ground of the soul more fertile, if you will.
Very nice.
Thank you.
Thank you. Your name? Where are you from?
My name is Pankaj, and it also means lotus. Mm. Imagine that. Mm. So I've had to grow up where people kept asking me, do you know what your name means, Pankaj? Mm. And it would pain me sometimes to tell people, yes, I do know what it means. But it was mechanical that, yes, but instinctively I kind of knew that we grew up in muck, but we are still supposed to be above that. and not allow any of this impurity of the world to affect us. So that's what Pankaj means.
Very
and I'm
nice.
from the Boston Center.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So anyone else want to come and share something? But yeah, all those virtues, if we don't experiment and experience them in our life, they're just words. So that's what we're here for, to make everything alive. And he was mentioning a little bit about his background coming from Jain, but in one of our dialogues somebody said that religions have hijacked God. Now when people say the word God, most people say, step back, and it's like it's not a very positive word in many places, because often religion has made God small. But then, was it the religion or was it the culture that hijacked the religion? So no one's to blame. But sometimes religion has made God very small, because we weren't allowed to question. It was discouraged, it was frowned upon. So anyone else want to share something?
Om Shanti, I'm Nancy and I'm from the UK.
A little bit closer, thanks.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm Nancy from the UK, so Om Shanti. I think Mandela is a great example of what we've been talking about, and how he went into prison and with so much anger. I think he was there for something like 27 years and came out in such humility. And then when he was made president, he said in his speech that it wasn't our weaknesses that we feared the most, it's our own greatnesses. And that made me think.
Yeah.
So, Om Shanti.
Yeah. Yeah, he actually said that poem I was mentioning, he spoke that when he was released from prison, but it was actually written by Marianne Williamson. But he took that poem because it expressed him. Yeah, thank you.